I'm joined now by Fraz, ex-police officer of a couple of forces, and he's here to tell his story online to yourselves. So, hello, Fraz, and
hello, mate.
Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Like I said, it's been 20 years, I think, since we last met.
It's been many years, yes. So, what would you do? Just before we go into your sort of police service and that, let's get a bit of a background for yourself. So, you know, what was your upbringing? Where was you born? Where did you grow up? That sort of stuff. What did you do before the police?
So, I grew up in Peterborough. I say stupidly, and I mean it now, stupidly joined the police at 18. Maybe I should live my life a little bit longer, but we all make mistakes in life. But I joined the police at 18, so it was my first real job. Joined British Transport Police in central London, and then had a varied career.
So just why did you want to be a police officer originally?
Honestly, it was a stopgap. It was going to fund the salary was going to fund a different career. I'm not going to go into what I wanted to do, but it was going to fund training for another career. But like I said, life mistakes. I ended up staying.
Okay, so yeah, you joined British Transport Police. So where did you? What's the process of that, and where do you do training and stuff like that?
I mean, the process was. It's quite long-winded. It took a while, all the applications, the vetting, the fitness tests, the references. Got through that. Got given a start date. 2004. I went to Tadworth for 2 weeks. Did my initial training there. Really nice facility. In Surrey, in the countryside in Surrey. Went to Brighton on Dunsmore. Did my basic training there. I think, if I remember rightly, it's probably about 12 weeks residential in Brighton and Dunsmore and Coventry. And then I got posted to London North. We're in the old Operation Miami, for those of you that remember it, the old Silverlink line from, is it Harlesden to Stratford, all the lovely boroughs in between that. So Operation Miami, based at Highbury in Islington. And I'll tell you what, there were some fantastic people there, great guys back then, proper old school coppers, mixture with new coppers. Absolutely brilliant place to have worked.
So what job was you doing? What was your day-to-day?
So we were, I think it was a bit confused really. We weren't response officers. I think we were S&T officers, weren't we, in Operation Miami? We were effectively your neighbourhood officers of the Silverlink line. So it was proactive patrolling, from Harrow and Willesden all the way to Stratford, train patrols, combination of car patrols. It wasn't like you guys at King's Cross, dealing with everything response-wise from London North. It was all right. It's just you box standard police officer. You're out patrolling, looking. You've got your priorities. Staff assaults, fare evaders, drugs, weapons, all sorts. You're completely varied, but all confined to that Silverlink line.
Yeah. So how long did you stay on that for?
3 years.
Yeah.
I transferred.
So then you pretty transfer. What was the reason for your transfer?
Stupidity, naivety, inexperience, all the things that go with, how old would I have been then? About 20 years old. Thinking.
What kind of era is this? What sort of year are we talking in years?
It's probably 2007. 2007. So there was a PC I worked with who transferred to Hertfordshire, and he'd been there a matter of 2 weeks. Bless him, he's no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a good friend of mine. We joined together, went through, Brighton and Tadworth together, and he transferred out and he was singing the praises. Oh, it's great. You want to transfer to a county force, it's a lot better. But I think the old school BTP officers knew you don't deal with domestics. You didn't deal with, well, I don't know what it's like now. I think you do deal with domestics on the railway, but it was very black and white. Outside is Met, inside is BTP. There were perks to being in BTP, but I think I was not that I was led up a garden path. I think I made my own decision. I don't think it was the right decision. I remember my last day in BTP, a chief inspector from London Underground telling me, "Look, don't go. Whatever you do, don't go. I've been there. Come and you can come and have a posting on response on London Underground at CLPS."
Yeah.
I should have actually. I should have. I knew that chief inspector from for quite some time, and he was giving me a cushy posting, but curiosity, I suppose, naivety, mix it all together. I know it probably don't sound good. You're sitting there thinking, "Oh God, this guy's a copper. What's he talking about? Naivety and curiosity and stupidity." But no, I chose to go. I chose to transfer to Herts, and it was probably the start of my downward demise. Not straight away, but over the course of many years.
Yeah. So you transferred to Hertfordshire?
Yeah.
What was the process in that?
Do you know what? It was just fill in an application form, go for an interview, at Welling at the headquarters. And do you know what? I'll be honest. My first impressions of arriving at Welling, I thought, fucking hell, what a shithole. Compared to, I think BTP back then, we had Camden had just opened, hadn't it? Nice new building, nice fresh, we're starting to get nice kit. And I just looked at it and I thought, do you know what? Something's not right here. But I don't know. It just kept me going. I went for the interview. The interview was pretty straightforward with the superintendent. Really lovely guy. I had an interview with him. They sent me out the room for a couple of minutes, called me back in to give me the result. "Oh, great. Well done. You passed. Do you want to join?" "Oh, yeah, all right then," if you say so. And that was that. And then, I got my posting and
So where did you get posted to?
North Herts, Hitchin.
Yeah.
Nice little town.
Yeah.
But it was an eye opener. It really was an eye opener in lots of different ways. The people, another thing, the size of the shifts, it was non-existent. You had a handful of PCs to cover huge areas. Completely different world.
So in what respect, what kind of things were you dealing with up there?
Shit. To summarise it, it was crap, absolute crap. You think, you're going to come out, you're going to deal with proper crime, and it was domestics. Not about 75% of it was domestics. Same old faces, same old places, same addresses. Every day it was the same thing. Same thing. Domestics. You're picking up a lot of crimes, burglaries, criminal damage. Facebook. I think Facebook was in its infancy back then. So things like online harassment, malicious communications. Malicious communications for a transport body. Like, what's that? What are you talking about? Malicious communications? What's that offence? There were a lot of things. It did broaden your kind of knowledge in terms of policing, but not in a good way. Not it wasn't. There wasn't really much proactiveness in the silent police. It was 100% reactive, job to job to job to job, and before you knew it, your workload's through the roof. Like any copper nowadays will tell you, workloads are horrible, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So progressing from there, so you obviously joined a Hitchin. Well, how was it? How was the culture there? What was the scenes like?
In the early sort of, 2007, 2008, it was quite relaxed. There was an element of it was quite relaxed, even given the fact that there wasn't many numbers. So my shift, we had 4 PCs. I remember rocking up on my first day thinking, well, "Where's the rest of you?" "Well, this is it. We've got 1 double crew car, 2 single crew cars," and they were all they were nice people. Some of them I'm still in touch with. it wasn't a stressful. It didn't feel like a pressure pot or a pressure cooker. You knew you were short staffed. You knew there was 6 or 7 pages of incidents logs that were outstanding, but it just got dealt with. The skippers back then, they were old school. One was actually quite a good friend who ended up being a witness at my wedding, a best man. Great guys, proper old school sergeants, experienced, and they managed it. You managed to power along. Didn't always get off on time, but yeah, you didn't feel like you were under that thumb. It wasn't a pressure cooker. There were you knew one more job would tip you over. Was through the roof. There was an element of calm at that stage at that specific moment in time. Those early 2000 parts. So it was all right.
So you stayed on response at Hitchin? Is that did you move?
Response in Hitchin till late 2013, before over to the ANPR intercept team. So I very quickly found that with me in particular, you've got different styles of coppers, and I'm going to put it out there, and a lot of you are going to agree. Some of you probably think he's talking shit, but to be fair, I don't care. You've got coppers that will turn up, that are proactive, that will go out hunt criminals. That's and they'll pick up jobs in between. They'll do everything. They'll be first ones in, last ones out. But the other ones are, they're dedicated. They'll come in. They'll be there to back you up. And then you've got the dog shit lazy ones, the ones that will turn up with a minute before parade. They'll be the first ones out. They'll take the long way round on I calls or immediates. They do the least as possible. And and I found out very quickly that I had the niche of proactiveness, where I'd stop cars and I'd get good results out of them, or stop people, get results, and that was me. I'd get in early stupidly. I look back at it now and think, all those times I got in an hour early, half an hour early, and so I applied to the intercept team.
So that's just for people so they can understand it, not from a police background. The ANPR is. Can you explain what that is?
It's a specialist unit. It's roads. It's a branch of roads policing with ANPR equipped vehicles, so automatic number plate recognition systems, where you're out targeting criminality that using the road networks by use of ANPR or your proactiveness. Your assigned areas, hotspot areas, or where certain. So let's keep it simple. BCUs or boroughs are bidded on, where they've got, I don't know, a burglary issue or a drug issue, and you'd go out and you'd target individuals using the roads, using technology, or like I said, your own proactiveness in high performance cars, but quicker cars than your normal IRV as such.
So you've joined this team and you carry on being proactive. I guess pretty busy.
Really busy. Do you know what? Out of my policing career, other than Operation Miami at BTP, even though it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, the intercept unit was brilliant. The people were great, fantastic people, absolutely great people. Like-minded people. There was banter that you could have a laugh. The skipper, bless him, he's retired now. Obviously, we're not naming names, but probably one of the best skippers I've ever had the privilege to work with. And it was great. It was great fun. You'd go out, you'd hunt criminals, you'd have your pursuits, and then you'd have the downside of it, which was always the paperwork, the endless amount of red tape and crap that would keep you off the road. But I think there was a point in time, government wise, where things changed very quickly, and I'd probably say I'm going to say it. Under the Theresa May when she was Prime Minister, I think it was around about 2015, 2016, once she started attacking the police, cutting money, accusing the police of crime wolf and all this nonsense about policing by consent. Things changed, and along with that change came the demise of intercept teams, and it was disbanded, unfortunately. So we all got moved on to onto roads policing. So we became traffic cops as a result of those cuts and the department being chopped.
How did that make you feel?
I was pissed off, because I thought, the people I worked with, I really liked. The sergeant I worked with, did a lot for me. It was upsetting. Not say upsetting. It kind of sounds a bit dramatic. It was nice, but for me, at that specific moment in time, with the cuts, with the changes in the police force, and I'll say force because it's not service, and it most certainly isn't an organisation or any of these wafty corporate terms that people use. It should be seen as a force. It was better than going back to shift. It was better than going back to being a response cop on shift, being moved to roads policing, because at that moment in time, they were suffering. Changes, policies, procedures, endless waiting time in custody, hospital guards, sitting with people that pull I'm feeling a bit of chest pain. What's the fuck wrong with you, mate? But you have to go sit down with them at the hospital, hours on end, never getting off on time. And I think society for me personally, like I said, people can sit here, they can make their own mind up. For me personally, I think society had changed 2015, 2016 with all the cuts, the public cuts of public services, everything had gone to shit. Society had started going downhill. And in regards to society then going downhill, policing became impossible, didn't it? It was just endless amounts of jobs and not enough people, not enough bums on seats as such to deal with them. So in a way, I was glad I managed to get to roads policing. Not saying that roads policing officers are shy of work or better than response officers or any other officer or PC in that regard, but in a way they are shielded from those logs, those endless pages of logs, and they have a specific role, which is road safety, which is reducing killed and serious injury on road networks through counties. So it is still quite a responsible job, quite a serious job, and the things you're subjected to or the things you see, no human being should see.
Go through that for me. Tell me a bit about
that. Decapitations. We've seen it in BTP, haven't we? BTP is the worst end of fatalities of any human being. To be fair, any loss of life for a human being, regardless of who they are or what they've done, it's not a good thing. But BTP, for me, the 100s that I went to, I couldn't ever see a human being in the mess that was left. That was just me personally. I knew it was at one stage. Yeah, that's a human life that's just been lost. With roads policing, it's different. Sometimes you'll get to people that are seriously injured, that are on the last moments of their life. Others are already unconscious and succumb to their injuries. You get there, they've still got pulse, they've still got vital signs, but don't make it. Others on the opposite end, ejections, decapitations, things you don't want to see, especially being single crewed roads policing officer. One, I could give specific incidents, but when you get that call on that radio and you're single crewed, can you attend so-and-so location, report of 2 vehicle or whatever RTC, serious injuries, potentially likely to prove. When you hear those words, likely to prove, you know it's serious. You get there, utter carnage, and you're thinking, I'm on my own here. You've got members of the public walking around like, this isn't an attack on members of the public. Everyone deals with shocking situations differently. But I tend to find that members of the public were more of a hindrance because there'd be an element of shock. They'd be uncontrollable. They'd be all over the place. Have you seen? You've got so much to manage, and you're thinking, do you know what? I just wish I was double crewed, or my teammates arrive at the same time as me, and you can hear them on the radio. Yeah, we're 10 minutes away, we're 20 minutes away, but you walk up to these cars, and oh, God, here we go again. Is there anything I can do for this person? No. What do I need to do now? Keep myself safe and keep these people safe, secure the scene, and wait for everyone else to turn. And even in the cases where they were still, where there was something you could do, you'd get on with it, but in your head you'd be crying, I need help. I can't do this by myself. But you'd get on with it like any cop does. When you come, any police officer, regardless of, forget about the scale of police officers. I've said whether you've got your good ones, your okay ones, and the ones that are just there to pick up a wage. When the chips are, you just get on with it. But being on your own for long periods of time, having to deal with those sort of things, it takes its toll. It really does, and especially when it involves children or families, or it's not pleasant. But you get on with it, and you try and do the best for the people that are involved, and you hope everyone makes it through. But like I said, not everyone is lucky enough to make it.
I think that's I've been in the same police force as you, but back to front, if you like. I came from Hertz and went to BTP. But I think from the management point of view, they both, well, all police forces, I think, have this thing in their head that to maximise, presence of policing, is putting out people single crew, whether that's be on foot, whether that be in a car or whatever. To almost fool the public into believing there's more cops out there.
Exactly.
Fortunately,
you go to most of these police stations, there's more cars in the car park than there are coppers to crew.
Yeah. And I think they're sort of ignoring the fact that, one, it takes a strain on you, and two, it's dangerous.
It is. It's a good point you make, because it is a false sense of security for the members of the public, because most of these police cars that you see, whether they're in towns or even now sometimes on the motorway network, they're crewed by PCSOs.
Yeah.
It gives you the illusion that there are more police out there to deal with these, but in fact there aren't. And like you say, with management, is how do we cover a mass area with a limited resource? Yeah, it's single crew. Off you go, mate. Here you go. You've got the whole of the M1 north and south and bit of the M25 to cover by yourself. Good luck. And we'll see you at the end of the shift, or you might not be here at the end of the shift, but we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Yeah, it is an illusion. It is an illusion. And I don't think it's a good practice. I don't think in my personal view, I don't think any cop should be single crewed. You've not only got a county to manage, you've got these people. They're humans. They're on the same side. You've got to manage them. But sending them out in far-flung areas by themselves with a baton or CS and a pair of quick cuffs, you don't cut it. It's not enough. It's not enough.
No, I fully agree. So going on from that, so you went to road policing.
Yeah.
So you've been going to these incidents. So what came after that?
Well, that was the end of my career.
So you finished road policing. So what sort of
I,
what changed? What does you decide not to stay or whatever?
uh, so around 2016, I knew I was struggling. I knew I was struggling mentally in the job, and I'm not going to sit here and have people tell me, well, if you can't cut it, you shouldn't have been a copper. Well, I've got 10 commendations that says I can cut it as a copper, and in fact, I did do my job to the highest of standards. But those things that I saw, like I said, that no human being should see, and especially by yourself, one involving a child fatality that, I've got no connection to this person, but I'm a human being. I can still have emotion. It did affect me. It really affected me. I wasn't sleeping. I was having nightmares. I was starting to do things that wasn't me. It started from small things, from forgetting things to, finishing shifts, like late shifts in particular. And instead of taking that 10-minute car journey home, I'd snap out of whatever was in my head, and I'd travelled, an hour and a half up the A1 north and ended up in places like Grantham, which is like 80, 90 miles away from where I live. Little things to that, forgetting to put CS away, forgetting to file paperwork in time, coming into briefing and just dropping my gaze, closing my eyes, to becoming more reckless with certain things I was doing in life, becoming more vocal towards people, whether it be sergeants, inspectors, or PCs, or even actually a superintendent, which is a different story, but you deserved what you got. Not that I'm happy about it, but there's a pattern. There's something wrong in your head. You're not sleeping. You're not wanting to go to work. You're making an excuse in your mind. How can I stop going to work? What can I use as an excuse today to not have to go and deal with this? And it got to a stage where, I'd love to go into 100% deal, but I don't think it was even a conscious decision. I took a colossal overdose of prescription medication, as a result of my mental health declining. My health had started to decline. And as a result of my health declining, whilst my mental health was left untreated, both by occupational health and by the GPs, they'd started giving me very strong painkillers to manage other symptoms in regards to my health. And, I look back at it now and I think, wow, I didn't even realise I was doing this, but I was stockpiling these medications. I don't know why. I was stockpiling things like morphine, cocodamol, really strong opiate painkillers. I was stockpiling them. I wasn't taking them. I was just not using them. And then one day, there was a change at work. They brought in this new system, Athena, where it was all your case files were done online, and I just couldn't operate this system for the life of me, no matter how much someone told me to do it. I mean, I've never been good at computers. I always liked the old pen paper method. I know it sounds pretty stupid, me sitting here saying the computer systems tipped me over the edge, but it was a culmination of everything, of dealing with crap, seeing these things, not having the support, not having the treatment, not having the backup, being on my own for long periods of time, not being able to confide in someone. I'm suffering, I'm broken, I'm not sleeping, I'm doing crazy stuff. And I took myself off, wrote a suicide note, quite a lengthy suicide note, from what I'm led to believe, which I'll come back onto in a second. Yeah, I had a wife, 2 kids. I took myself off and swallowed all these tablets. And I remember that day clearly. You know, I was in Shuttleworth, you know, in the countryside. I found a nice place. There was a lake. There was a sole tree. There was not a single person around, and in the distance you could see the steeple of a church. And I set myself up against this tree, and I started eating these tablets with a bottle of alcohol. My phone started ringing. Where are you? And I obviously wasn't very coherent. To then, I think a paramedic calling me, and then I think because I'd taken so much by that stage, the last thing, I don't remember anything after that. It was just blackness, darkness, and I'd obviously fallen unconscious. And then waking up in you know, in an intensive care unit in hospital with two coppers sat next to me. And I'm thinking, what the hell's happened here? You know, couldn't comprehend what had happened. You know, it completely gone. You know, being told what I'd done, and then having a doctor look me square in the face saying, "How are you still here with the medication you took? How are you? You know, we're surprised you're still alive." You know, the amount of drugs they'd given me to reverse the morphine and opiate based. You know, the consultant said we've never used that much on anyone. To then processing it and have a police officer, and like I said, we're not going to name names, but I always remember the first thing I said to this police officer was, "Did Posh beat Walsall?" Did they beat Walsall? And they hadn't. I think they lost 4-0. We needed to win that game to get into the playoffs. And he laughed. He said, "Oh, let me check." And he said, "No, you lost." And then his mate looked at me and he said, "Fraz," he said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't know what all right is." And he said, he put his hand out, and had all these wires connected to me, and he put his hand out, and he took my hand, and he shook my hand, and he said, "Mate, you've said what everyone else is thinking that haven't got the guts to say it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "The letter you wrote, what you said in there of how you've been abandoned, how there's no treatment for officers, how there's officers that are broken, that are suffering, that are pushing through, working, senior management using PCs as a project to get their next PIP or their next promotion, all the way down to Athena, people selling a project that's, no good to anyone because it's their retirement project. They're going to end up on the board of these big corporations that are selling these systems. And he said, "You're saying what everyone's thinking that didn't have the guts to say." And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, "You left a letter in your car." He complimented me because, "I knew you were a road policing officer because how clean your car was." I was like, "Oh, okay." I said, anyway, short of it is, I ended up in a psychiatric unit for my own safety. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I got sent to the Onyx ward in Luton as a copper. I got driven there in a marked police vehicle after I'd recovered from hospital, sat in the front of this police car with the PC, driving me to a psychiatric unit to go get some respite. And as a police officer, by that stage of 14 years, you're thinking, shit, I used to take people to these places. I'm ending up in one. But what I experienced there was, for me, it actually was a good experience because I ended up playing Xbox, playing football with the other guys that were in there. I had my own room, being fed, I was getting my medication, I was getting the treatment I needed. So it worked for me. Yeah, it wasn't nice. I'm not saying it's great, being locked up in a psychiatric ward. But that's the result of what I'd gone through, and that's a very small snippet of what led to that.
Yeah. So just going back to your time on road police and before, even with BTP, so Hertfordshire and BTP, your policing experiences. How do you find the support when you're say you've been to an incident, quite a traumatic incident that you've seen, witnessed, dealt with? When you finish the incident, what is the support given to officers?
Okay, let's start with BTP. I mean, obviously, my experience is early 2000s with BTP, but I will say, and I've been asking to people what happened to John Baker, who's a sergeant. I actually really loved the bloke. He's brilliant skipper, fantastic guy. My first one under as an 18-year-old, I admit, I was like, whoa, fucking hell. Why do people do this? And I'd never seen something that you'd never thought a human body could end up as. But I remember saying to John at the end, he said, "Are you all right, Fraz? That's your first one." I was like, I said, "Smell, like I just can't get certain things out of my mind." And we were on an early shift. That fatality had happened just outside Finsbury Park. And he looked at everyone and goes, "Right, Fraz's first one under." He's a bit, I can't remember the word he used, but he said, "We're going to the pub afterwards." So we went down the pub, had a few drinks, had a laugh. But there was that culture of, we'll support him.
Yeah.
We'll help him. We'll try and take his mind off it. I'm not saying alcohol is, and I'm not saying alcohol is the right way to deal with mental health or deal with traumatic incidents. But it worked back then because it was, you had very experienced people. You had your mates around you, and we didn't talk about it. They just took your mind off it, and you come back to work the next day and you're ready to go again. Fast forward to Hertfordshire, they use this thing called TRIM. Now, what's the TRIM assessment? I still have got no fucking clue what a TRIM assessment is, but all I know is that if you've been to a traumatic incident, the controller puts a note on the CAD as such, or incident, saying TRIM for officers, and basically it was a PC that had a very quick crash course in mental health, or not even counselling. It's not even counselling. You'd be contacted by someone who'd say, "Oh, hi, Franz, you got sent to that fatality, or or death. How you doing?" How am I doing? I'm at work, first of all, and yeah, I'm all right. All right, great. If you need anything, here's my details. Contact me. All right, thanks. But there's twofold here. As a bloke, and I'll challenge any bloke to say otherwise, and especially coppers, male coppers. Not many male coppers will put their head above the parapet and say, "Do you know what? I'm really fucked up after that. I'm really suffering after that." What they'll think is, if I say something, I could potentially be in a bit of bother here, or I might not have the support. There's not an outlet of support that gives you the confidence to say, "Do you know what, Sarge or Gov, I'm struggling here," because there's nothing there that gives you that confidence to say, actually, is this reaction I'm feeling normal, or is it the fact that I'm not cut out to do this job? And most people will probably put it in that second box, not as extreme as cut out to do the job. There's just no confidence there to say, "All right, I'm going to put my head up and say I'm unwell." So that was the way Hertz dealt with it. In roads policing, obviously it advanced a little bit more. This trim assessment had advanced a little bit more. You'd go sit in some office, with a comfortable chair. "How you doing, for us?" I've got 15 collision books. I've got X, Y, and Z inquiries to do. And, no, about the incident. Oh, well, there's another one, isn't it? I'm fine, I suppose. But all those little incidents, they're building up and building up and building up that pressure cooker to the point of explosion. But it goes back to the same thing. There is no confidence at PC level that if you raise your head above the parapet and say, I'm suffering because of what I've seen. That you're going to get the support, B, you're going to be believed, and C, that they're going to do anything to help you overcome those issues. In which case, people will just hide it away and not do anything about it. So that's my experience in regards to how they dealt with mental health. Now, the occupational health units, they're make-believe doctors, aren't they? Let's face it. What's the matter with you? Fill in this A4 bit of paper with a load of scores. Oh yeah, you're a bit depressed, Fraz. Have you seen your GP, Fraz? Yeah. What have your GP said? Well, pop one of these tablets once a morning. Right, okay. How's that working for you? Don't know. All right, thanks. We'll write to your sergeant. Off you go. Back you go.
So, how do you feel that, or how do you think it should be dealt, or things should change in that regard? So, as in, what do you think these forces should be doing?
I think if you're subjected to anything that's triggered your mental health or aggravated your mental health, is not an illness. And people need to stop using the word illness. It is not an illness, it's an injury. You have been injured as a result of something you have seen. And like I said, if you want to debate it with me, come and debate it with me. It's not an illness. These people aren't unwell, they are injured. As much as you could go out now on patrol and be lumped in the face and have your jaw broken or your nose broken, they're not going to say, oh, you're ill. Oh, Fraz, you had your nose and your jaw broken. You're fucking ill, mate. No, I've been injured. I've been assaulted. I'm injured. It's an injury. So if it's an injury that's been caused by your occupation, well, go and help these people. You know, it's all well and good saying, oh, do you know what? You can go to Flint House, but you've got to go to your GP to get it signed off. All right, okay, well, now my GP signed it off, I'm going to go Flint. And I'm not knocking Flint House because I think Flint House is a brilliant place, but it leads people into a false sense of security, especially if you're going there for your mental health. Because when you go in there, you sign or you do those forms that tells them how depressed you are, or where you are in terms of your mental health. And most people will be at the end of their tether. But because you're in that protective bubble for 2 weeks, in nice environment around like-minded people, being fed, beautiful place, brilliant people, great guys, fantastic people. When you leave and you do that same form, you've then gone from being like severely depressed to I'm all right to then back on patrol 2 days later for it to all go to shit again. But then them turning around and saying, well, actually, Fraz, you know what? You had 2 weeks on the job at Flint House. You should be all right. You should be magically cured of all those things that you've seen. It don't fucking work like that, mate. I don't give a shit what rank you are, but because you've hid behind a desk for the vast majority of your career and you've not been subjected or seen these things, you have no fucking appreciation of what these people or minions or whatever you want to call them are seeing or having to go through, and the effect it's having on their personal life. You've got no fucking idea. So you can sit behind your desk and read whatever you want on a fucking bit of paper. You have no clue. You have zero clue, and you're not in a position to dictate or make any decision on what happens with that person. What you should be saying is, well, they're clearly injured, they're clearly suffering, they're clearly we need to get this person help. Do they fuck? The first thing they'll say is, oh, you've been signed off for 6 months by your GP. You'll have someone come round, the sergeant, and they're biting their teeth, but they have to ask you that overwhelming question. They'll say, yeah, oh, how you doing, Fraz? Yeah, I'm all right. I'm at home, signed off sick, blah, blah, blah. But the overwhelming question that's come down from the top, when are you coming back to work? Or what can we do to support you back to work? And I'll use me as an example. So I spent a time in a psychiatric unit getting myself sorted out, thinking, I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to go home and I'm going to recuperate. I'm going to try and fix the issues at home, that, you know, the devastating consequences it's had on my wife, my children, that potentially I nearly ended my life. The sergeant that looked after me, who was 100% a people's person, you know, and I'm going to mention his name, Keith Evans. Every sergeant up and down this country needs to take a leaf out of that guy's book. That's how you manage people. That's how you look after people. You don't put shit posters up on fucking walls saying it's okay not to be okay. Fuck off. Are you taking the piss? Are you fucking taking the piss? You're mugging people off by putting these offensive posters up on walls. It's okay not to be okay. Well, let me tell you something. It fucking ain't, because if you you put your head above the parapet,
So do you think that
and
police...
they just do best by people. They think, oh, do you know, we're all one big family. We've got your best interest in heart. You know, we're going to look after you if you get injured or if you get unwell. Putting up a poster, is that doing good by people or doing the best for people? Give me a fucking break. Come on. Putting a poster up on a wall in a canteen, you're taking the piss. You really are. I'm sorry, but...
No. It's, you know, very true. I don't think that's particular to that police force. In fact, I know it's not. Posters go up for all sorts of reasons, and then he's completely ignored. You know, whether that be for behaviour, whether it be for mental health or whatever. Hierarchy put it up, and then when you do put your head up and say something, it's shot.
It is like a fairground. You know those ducks that pop up and you've got that little gun?
Yeah.
Right, which fucker's going to put his head up? Bang, bang. Right, we're going to take...
So I think, you know, so definitely things need to change in that regards. I mean, if they're going to put these things up, then the support needs to be in place.
Exactly. But do you know the only person other than Keith that gave me support was a person I never met face to face? And this will shock you. So I got classed as too complex to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Only person that supported me was someone from the EAP program for a period of 2 years. I never met her face to face. She'd call me once a week for sometimes up to 2 hours a time. It was the only person. Only person.
Yeah,
And that's your, you know,
as someone who, you know, a family man with kids that basically was very close to death, and caused by the job that he did. You know, yeah, thank you very much, sir. So you know, you've gone off the unit, you come back out. You're now off sick. So what happened going forward from that?
So I came back. They said, you can go on the intel unit, have as long as you need on the intel unit. We'll support you back to work. Literally within a couple of days, the new sergeant came and said, "Here you go, mate." He goes, "I'm your new sergeant." "Oh, hi, how you doing?" "Monday later, and how does single crewed around Luton sound to you?" I'm like, "What?" And the people around me, like, the guy next to me was kicking me in the leg. "Don't say yes, don't say yes." I'm like, "Do you know where I was a couple of weeks ago? I was sat in a psychiatric ward, and you want to give me the keys to a high performance BMW and say, 'Go on, mate, off you go around Luton and catch criminals'? Are you having a laugh?" "I'm only doing what the executive told me. You know, they've said they need to get you back out of trial. Don't shoot the messenger."
So we've been talking about various bits and pieces, but essentially, you know, obviously in the part you just did was about issues with your mental health caused by going to what you saw and dealt with as a police officer. And although it was supported by force, if you like, as you said earlier, as a force, the management of more senior level, it was very much get yourself back to work, get yourself out there, brush yourself down. You've had your time off.
Exactly.
You're fixed. And you know, I've spoken to other people today and before who, you know, have been who testify from very different many forces around the country and other organisations, blue light organisations, that say, you know, that's pretty common thing. So obviously, mental health, I'm thinking then is, you know, it's not the same as if you've got an illness or, you know, an injury where it can be seen. It's almost not believed, would you know? And because it can't be seen,
Yeah.
and not
So
it can be not believed. And then they're just thinking, oh, is he just wanting 6 months off or whatever, and then get yourself back.
that I think, like in any walks of life, you will get people that will play a card to their advantage.
Oh,
So if
absolutely.
they need time off, they will play the old, "I'm not well," or "I'm injured," or "I'm feeling a bit depressed." And yeah, there are. So I get. I'm not naive to the fact that the organisation need to like weed these sort of people out, or keep on top of it. Um, Equally, what I don't want people to sit there thinking is, well, you have to get to a stage where you have to end your life or have a suicide attempt to be classed as having an injury, or be affected by mental. I'm not saying that. Mental health affects people in different ways. Some people have a better tolerance of coping with it. Other people, like myself, I didn't have a tolerance to cope with it. I couldn't manage it. But senior management, what I'm saying is, people that don't know you, that just read things that aren't accurate. Because let's face it, these OH, and I've got an OHU bundle that is that if I compared the OH notes to my clinical notes from NHS or GP or mental health services, there's a gulf of a difference of whether that information's being portrayed accurately by occupational health. Now, what I'm saying is, are occupational health under pressure to just say, well, let's get this person back out as quickly as we can, in the face of differing opinions from medical professionals? Now, in my case, if an occupational health unit was under the General Medical Council or something, I'd probably have a good claim for clinical negligence. But I think there's a lot of pressure that they know they haven't got the people to put bums on seats. They're not really considering individual circumstances and supporting that officer back. And like I said, sticking a poster up saying it's okay not to be okay doesn't cut it. You've got to support them. It's the only way. No, I've said this before to people. The police cars that you drive around in, they break, they get sent to the garage. Now, I'm not going to comment on what level of service or repair levels they get given, but I'm pretty sure they get all the money spent on it. If it needs one new tyre, all four tyres are replaced. They're not replaced by your budget round the corner 50 quid tyre. Michelin's, Pirelli's, top range tyres, looked after, everything's repaired. Why can't you spend that money on human beings, the people that operate these vehicles? What? Why is it difficult to say, well, do you know what? We've got all the evidence we need on this person or their individual case. They're clearly injured and are suffering. So we will get them the support we need. Flint House doesn't cut it. I'm sorry, but Flint House doesn't, for mental health, it doesn't cut it. For physical injury, if you've been assaulted or injured on duty or whatever, yeah, it's a fantastic place. But I think when it comes to psychological stuff, you've got to be really careful. You've got to be really careful. Now, in between all that, we're, as victims, are sitting here suffering. We're not getting any better. We don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know, what the next phone call is going to be. But they're very quick to send you out a letter. They're very quick to send you out a letter to say, I appreciate you being off for 5 months and 2 weeks, but you're coming up to 6 months, and here's your half pay notice or your unsatisfactory performance notice because you've been off work for so long. If you're sitting there thinking, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got bills to pay, but I've got this protection from an organisation that should have my best interest and heart. They know I'm not making it up. They know I'm suffering. They're going to support me. To then get a message, oh, your case is going to the gold meeting. Fucking hell, well, great, gold meeting. Gold meeting for me, just for me. What? Yeah, every month or something, the chief constable or the ACC has a meeting where they discuss injured officers or officers off on long term, sickness. And they review their pay, and they're going to make the decision about you whether you're going to carry on getting full pay. And you're sitting there, and it's making you more and more unwell to the point you may make the wrong decision because you're under so much pressure. You think, right, I'm going to go back to work, but you're not well. So you've stuck a broken band-aid on yourself, and you go back, not 100%. Whether that culminates in you doing something on duty, which could then land you in the shit, or even worse, you going off and self-harming or and it's the same with me, unfortunately. I came out the psychiatric unit, went back, sat at an Intel desk, quite happy doing that, researching intelligence, putting out briefing slides, to then being told by a sergeant, sorry, you're coming back out on a late turn, single crewed in Luton. There's something seriously wrong here. And, luckily I said no. At that stage, I knew my roads policing career was over. I knew it was over. I knew I couldn't ever get behind a roads policing car again. It was upsetting. Yeah, it did make me cry. I thought, this is a job I love. This is what I wanted to see. The end of my career was being a traffic cop. So they basically they abandoned me completely, absolutely completely. My old chief inspector took me under his wing. I might have shared with you my resignation notice actually and what he put on there. But basically, what they did was they sent me to a council office in Stevenage, a very dark room with no one else there other than there was two civilians in the CCTV operation room. You had two civilians that were monitoring cameras for the council, and in the back office was me downloading evidential requests for officers in a dark room by myself with no one to check up on me other than a text message or a quick brief phone call. And my case was still going through occupational health. The sergeant said to me, "Oh, we'll get occupational health to contact you because by this stage there'd been a long period of time, no one had contacted me." In my head, I wanted to know, well, what's going on? Am I going to get ill health retired? Am I going to get more support? Are they going to pay for counselling? Are they going to give me the treatment I need? No answers. Sergeants didn't have the answer. Chief Inspector didn't have the answer. So then, my phone ringing and someone from occupation health saying, and these were the exact words. Hi, I'm so and so from occupational health. I've just been told to call you. I don't really know what's going on, but I've just been told to call you to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, are you having a laugh? Are you honestly taking the fucking piss? You're calling me because you've been told to call me. And I hung up and I was like, you clearly got no interest in helping me. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to converse with you. I wouldn't open a conversation like that with anyone. You can say 2 + 2 = 4. Madman on paper. He's got mental health issues. He's clearly mad, delusional, or whatever else comes with mental health, or the stigma of having a diagnosis of mental health. The biggest thing I'm going to say to people is, you can sit here and think this guy is clearly a lunatic. He's mad. I'm not. I promise you, I'm not. I've been out of the job now. Probably about coming up to 3.5 years. I left of my own accord. On my own terms. I've rebuilt my life as best as I can. But if you need help, and if you're sitting here watching this thinking, I'm struggling, go to your GP, go to your local mental health. There's no shame in picking up that phone.
Absolutely.
Ringing and saying, I'm suffering. You don't even have to tell your sergeant. Go get the help. Get it all documented and get the help you need from the mental health services. Now, a lot of you are going to sit there and say, oh, well, the mental health services are shit. I promise you, they're not. I used to sit there thinking the mental health team are crap. They're absolute dog shit. They're waste of space, waste of money, waste of public. They, other than the lady I used to speak to on the employment assistant program that used to call me once a week, they've been fantastic. They got me back to where I am out of suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
You know, they got me back to where I need to be. You know, I've got scars all up my arms from self-harming, and they've been absolutely great. There's no shame in going to them. Get everything
Fully agree.
Get everything documented by them. They're the professionals at the end of the day, not someone sat in an occupational health unit miles and miles away from where you are, or your sergeant, or your inspector, or your chief inspector, because they're not clinicians. They have got no right to decide what is right or what is wrong. So get it documented. Use the EAP. A lot of people think, oh, I don't want to speak to anyone on the phone. It's a lot better than what the job will give you. Now, I want to say this: if senior officers are going to watch this and think, well, you know, you can sell your propaganda as much as you want and sell it, because I know you've got the power behind you. I know you're a big organisation, but if you want to come and debate it with me and have the bollocks to sit in front of me, yeah, have the bollocks to come and sit in front of me or Mick or anyone else and tell me you have the best fucking interests of the people that you're supposed to be looking after. You're talking shit. You don't even fucking know them. You don't even know the ones that ended up killing themselves. You have no fucking idea the families, the kids, the wives, the husbands, the mums, the dads, the grandparents. You have no fucking idea what these people went through. Instead, you fucking covered it up. You covered it up so you didn't look bad, or you weren't held accountable for these people going off and killing themselves. It's fucking unacceptable. It's fucking unacceptable. And if it'd been anywhere else, you'd be up for manslaughter charges or negligence or whatever. But you've got the power to brush it under the carpet. I invite you. You can come to my house. I'll make you a banging curry and a cup of tea. You can sit here. I'll make a fucking mean curry. You might think, oh, he's absolutely mad. You can come and sit on my sofa and we'll have a chat and I'll show you the evidence. And if you still got the bollocks to tell me, actually, you're full of shit, well, I've got the evidence that says otherwise. Do right by people. These people aren't projects. They ain't numbers. They're human beings that deserve to be looked after. Stop treating them as your next promotion, because you might have a team of people that you're using as pawns for your career. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Get your heads out your asses and look after people. Because at the end of the day, if you ain't got PCs out in the streets fall, the country falls, you lose your jobs.
Yeah.
Simple, isn't it? Look after them.
It would be. I don't think it'll ever happen, but it would be nice to have one of these senior officers from these forces, and there are many.
Yeah, and,
You come on and have a chat with us. And
I said, I apologise for the language. I know it's unfiltered, but
it's a motive subject.
I've got to be who I am, and yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a potty mouth. I don't have a filter. I'm not ashamed of it. You know, I promise I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm not going to hurt you. Come and speak to me. Come and speak to me. You know, whether it's whatever your name is now, Prophet or whatever, in Hertfordshire, could be BTP. You know, whatever force if you want a real insight or first-hand experience, come and speak to me.
Yeah,
deal with it like
I really thank you for being so open and honest today. You know, it is a motive for you, and I can understand your passion. You know, and I don't think anyone's going to blame you for, you know.
Like I said, just don't forget those people that are unfortunately they're no longer here.